Hello there, and welcome to you. Thank you for joining me, Hilary McLellan, and
me, Ashleigh McLellan.
We're delighted that you've chosen to join this workshop, Calm is Capable, Training the Mind for Compassionate Focus when Coaching for Behavioural Change. There's a lot in that title, and we are going to be covering quite a lot in the session. So let me just run you through the blocks of information we'll be taking you through. So first and foremost, we'll be focusing on a problem that I experienced in coaching. Secondly, we'll be looking at that problem through the work of the Compassionate Mind Foundation and how Ashleigh and I work together to adapt some of their work from the clinical world across to the coaching world. Thirdly, we'll be looking at a product that we created at the same time as experimenting with some of this work in coaching practice. And finally, this is one of our clients using our product with a VR headset. We'll be visiting the research findings through the work we worked in partnership with Aston University using our product in the workplace. So a problem, a solution, something that's evolved from it, some juicy research findings that we really hope you'll find interesting. So let's start with the first point, and that was the problem. So as an exec and leadership coach, I specialise in emotional intelligence behavioural change. That's my focus. And this regularly, as you can imagine, leads to conversations with clients around the fears and anxieties that they may be experiencing consciously or subconsciously that limits their development of EQ or their emotional intelligence best self when they're under pressure, which is very common in the context of their work. The individuals I coach generally have got to the top of their game through having very high IQ, combined with great job experience, knowledge and qualifications that leads to promotion, unsurprisingly. But then they often find they're in a dilemma of having to step back and let go of this historic and tangible doing role. And performance is deemed to lie more in the soft skills, the building up of empathy with teams, the stepping back from tasks, coaching others rather than telling. And this can create some anxiety in them because they're letting go of very familiar habits that have served them well in their profession and career to date. But the nub of the problem for me as a coach was that often we would work around developing that emotional intelligence, and they would often cognitively and intellectually understand the problem they faced in needing to dial up some EQ, and equally understand the steps to take towards that development, but they get stuck. And this was a problem to me and a problem to them. We could often make a bit of progress, but it might be quite slow between coaching sessions. It could often feel like that there wasn't time, or maybe there just wasn't the space to be that vulnerable, or that sense of vulnerability. And actually, as a coach, I often considered whether I wasn't doing something as well as I could. So I needed to look for a solution. So how was I going to find a way through this? Obviously, working with emotional intelligence also means that if you're talking about fears and anxieties, you often find yourself on the boundary of where one might, as a coach, be suggesting a duty of care and perhaps a requirement to suggest a counsellor or a therapist. And I was very aware of this as well. So luckily, though, I have an awesome stepdaughter, Ashleigh, who's a clinical psychologist who just happens to specialise in compassion focused therapy. So how lucky am I? Because I was able to pick up the phone to her and say, oh, Ash, you know, is it just me? I'm really struggling here in my coaching around certain clients. And she was able to say, no, it's not just you. On the therapeutic side, it is also recognised that there is a patient group, often first served CBT as an offering to help them with issues, who also get stuck understanding it cognitively and intellectually, but not being able to make the progress. And hey, Hilary, that's why I became interested in compassion focused therapy. So on the back of that, we went along to the Compassionate Mind conference in London in 2018, full of counsellors and therapists, no one much like me around there, led by Professor Paul Gilbert from Derby University. I really started to become interested in some of this work, which we're going to be sharing with you in a moment. It led to me going on a 3-day course run by Paul, and then working with Ashleigh around, I think there's some models here and techniques that could be adapted for coaching quite safely within our professional world. Ashleigh and I spoke to Professor Gilbert. He was absolutely up for us playing with this. And so we needed to find a couple of clients from my world that we might be able to use some of this work with. So what did we do? We looked for a couple of folk who didn't look quite like this guy, but were on the way there. And they had we found 2 people in 2 different organisations, both in very senior roles. And we put it to them that we would like to co-coach them. They both shared the following. They were in work environments that were consistently pressurised and very competitive, and their personal circumstances show that they had a tendency, they'd come from a high achieving background, but this had kind of spilled over into stress and depression. So they filled the remit, and Ashleigh and I then had to think about, if they were up for working with us, how would we even frame this? We'd only ever worked individually in our own areas, so with our own businesses. So we made a start just by suggesting to both of these clients, okay, we're going to offer you 10 sessions of 1.5 hours. As a starter, we suggest that the 3 of us get together at the beginning and talk about how this might work and what you're wanting out of it and how we can help. Then Ashleigh will take the next 4 sessions one-to-one. She'll be looking at the past, by and large, up to the present. And she'll be using, by and large, the compassion-focused models that we want to start playing and exploring. And then Hilary will take over from the present, looking at the future in terms of your career and work focus. And then at the end, we'll all come together again. So that was the package they signed up to. 1 client, we've completed that package in total. The other, we haven't quite finished. So there's some comparisons we can share with you, but we certainly have some lovely feedback from the 1 completed client. So Ashleigh, over to you.
Yeah, over to me. I'm going to take you through a little bit about what I did in my work with the clients. Sorry, I thought I was still on mute then. So yeah, like Hilary said, I am a clinical psychologist. So when I am using these compassion focused models, I do go into more depth, but what I'm giving you is the scope of the models, and what I'm sharing today is a bit of a whistle-stop tour of some of the key key models that we use in compassion focused therapy that we're adapting for compassion focused coaching. And certainly what I share and have shared with these clients, Hilary uses with many of her clients who don't see me and don't need me. It's just these two particular folk we felt needed something a bit deeper, and it made sense for us to kind of do it in-house. And it certainly meant that we were able to work well for them. You know, it was joined up in the way that you work in teams in the NHS, for example. So with these two people, the blocks for their change were having these unbalanced affect systems, which I'm going to go into a bit more detail. But things like workload, too much stress, not enough time, were all features for both of them. Self-criticism, you know, you might recognize in your own work how prevalent that can be, and even kind of to the extent of self-attack. So we're going to look at how that impacts on us and how we unpick that a bit. But also past life events kept triggering the threat system and keeping it online. So this is where going into the past is the bit that I do as a clinician, you know, that maybe is slightly beyond the boundaries of coaching. But certainly I think you can kind of touch lightly on this because people know that that's there anyway. But also low on compassion. So let's think a bit about this word compassion. So often we think we know quite a lot about what we mean by the word compassion, but in the compassionate mind world, we're very careful to define it in the way that we understand it, because often it can get a bad press, you know, it can seem a bit soft, a bit fluffy, a bit weak. Also, people think it's just for other people, not for themselves. But fundamentally, compassion is rooted in our evolutionary caregiving system. And this is quite a key component to the model. Paul Gilbert defines compassion as a sensitivity to the suffering, or you might say pain or problems, in the self and others. So we include ourselves in this definition, with a commitment to try and alleviate and prevent the suffering. And so just in that definition, there is the noticing and the action. So we have these two psychologies. And why do we need compassion? Well, we need it because life is hard, isn't it? And all of us know this. This year, the past 18 months in particular, has been incredibly hard for everyone across the board for many different reasons. And what we know through science is that there's a great deal of evidence to demonstrate considerable benefits of caring and sharing relationships. And that's what compassion can cultivate, both for ourselves, you know, we have a relationship with ourselves, but also for others. And we're talking about, you know, it's not just nice, it's just not just kind of about kindness and niceness. It can take a lot of courage and bravery actually to face problems and to try and do something about them. And the benefits can be incredibly physiological. So we're talking about epigenetics here. You know, compassion can shape how our genes express themselves, our cardiovascular, immune system, autonomic nervous system. These multiple neural circuits that underpin pro-social behavior and happiness and health are all impacted by compassion. So this is why we think it's so important. So let's just think about our human brain, okay? Our brain is actually a bit of a mess. And it's a mess because it's the product of millions of years of evolution. You know, we are not actually adapted for the environment that we live in modern day. The evolutionary adaptation that our brain is sort of shaped for is living in hunter-gatherer societies. So we're kind of not quite, we haven't quite got the bandwidth for this technological age. So we've been shaped by evolution, we're shaped by our genetics and the social context that we're born into. So I'm just going to invite you just to take a brief pause here to really sort of consider this for yourself and reflect. And just think about adopting a sort of upright body posture. And if you're comfortable, close your eyes, or if not, just kind of focus on a spot ahead of you. And just take a couple of deep breaths. And I just want you to really let in this idea that the brain inside your head is the product of millions and millions of years of evolution. Those structures, the way the brain kind of operates, is triggered, fired off, that's a product of evolution. And that's not your fault. That's nothing to do with you, evolution. You've emerged from a flow of life. It's also the product of your genetics. You didn't choose your parents and the particular genes that you inherited from them. Your intelligence, skin colour, athletic ability, none of that was your choice. Nor did you choose the country or culture or family that you were born into, the school that you went to, the social context which has shaped your brain. Our brains we're like embryos when we're born as human beings, and they grow a huge amount and keep growing and developing until we're 25 years old. All of that early life experience was not your choice. And the point about this is, and you're welcome to open your eyes again, the point is it's not your fault. Now, this is a really key message in compassion focused coaching, compassion focused therapy. It's not your fault that you've got a brain that works the way it does. But unfortunately, it is your responsibility. It leaves you with problems, and it's only you that can take some responsibility in working out your particular brain, in essence. And what these models that I'm going to share do is help you take responsibility. So let's think about the brain a little bit more, and we sort of quite crudely, in a way, separate the brain out into the old brain and the new brain. So the old brain are these really ancient structures that we share with most of the mammals. Many reptiles have these same motives of harm avoidance, the need to get food, sexual opportunity, status. With mammals, this caring for offspring, emotions of anger, anxiety, sadness and joy, and these core survival behaviours of fight, flight, freeze, shut down, and also caring, really important for our survival. And then our new brain grew sort of alongside and kind of on top of, but is interwoven with our old brain. But what sets us apart as a human animal is our language ability, our reasoning, our planning, imagination, empathy, self-awareness. These make us uniquely human and give us a huge potential, and is why we have so much amazing technology in medicine, etc. But this part of our brain is only 2 million years old. Now that sounds like quite a long time, but if we think our old brain is 200 million years old, and what that can mean is we don't always quite know what we're doing with our new brain, and it can get hijacked by our old brain. So yes, we have medicine and technology, but we also have weapons of mass destruction, and our tribalism can hijack our new brain potential. On an individual level, however, let's just think about our own loops in our mind. So with one of the clients that we're talking about today, he really struggled with his sleep. And what was happening is his new brain would go over once everything is quiet and work is done. It would go over what had he done that day that could have been better, or that was wrong, or that was a mistake. And his old brain of sort of anxiety, or did I say something wrong, would be activated, and he'd loop back round into bit of self-criticism. Maybe I should know better, I should have behaved better. So old brain loops back down into anger. So you see how actually our new brain can keep our old brain online. I've got another little interactive exercise for you to do to illustrate this. So again, if you just take a couple of deep breaths and put your shoulders back, close your eyes if you wish, it can help, but you don't have to. And I'm just going to invite you to imagine a lemon So imagine that you're holding a lemon, lovely yellow colour. You feel the kind of waxy skin in your hand. And just imagine that you are going to chop this lemon up. So imagine you've got a chopping board in front of you and you chop it in half, and you can see the juice bursting out. You can smell the juice. Chop it into wedges and then hold a wedge up near your nose. Really sort of breathe in the smell of the lemon and just sort of notice anything that might be happening in your body. And then I'm going to invite you to imagine sinking your teeth into that wedge of lemon. All the juice bursts into your mouth, and just kind of see what that feels like, what's happening. Okay, so you can come back to the slide. So normally what happens is people tell me, you know, their mouth can start filling with saliva, or they get that kind of, you know, that sort of pinch in your jaw. So that is what happens when we have a real lemon. It activates our limbic system. We have saliva, we have that sort of pinched jaw. But we didn't have a real lemon, did we? This was just our imagination. So this is our new brain imagination. Still activates your old brain, your body, your physiological system in the same way. So what I'm saying is your brain doesn't care if something is real or imagined. And this is a really sort of key understanding of our brains, and we can use this in a helpful way. So if you're with someone you really fancy, you're there, you're both naked, you're about to get it on, your body reacts in a particular way, but hey, we don't need anyone there actually. You know, there's an awful lot of pornography that capitalizes on this. You know, just this sexual fantasy means that our body responds in the same way, has the same physiological response. If we're at work and someone is a bit bullying or threatening towards us, we're going to end up feeling fearful and depressed. You know, that is really hard to be around someone bringing you down all the time. It just has this trigger in our bodies. But, you know, sometimes we're doing that to ourselves. And can you see that still has the same physiological effect? So the way that we talk to ourselves, if we're being self-critical or self-attacking, we're activating these old systems. Conversely, if someone is warm and kind and caring, you know, really listens about how hard it's been, the day at work you've had or whatever, we can feel soothed and safe and connected. So, you know what I'm going to say, if we can generate that kind of self-compassion within us, then we can start to feel and activate parts of our physiological system which are helpful. So the key thing in compassion is to be helpful, not harmful. And that's what we're trying to develop and cultivate for people. And what we're doing is a bit of a brain hack in a way. The more we understand about how our brain works, the more we can do things that are going to be helpful for us. And this is what we share, you know, with clients, the clients we worked with. So the next kind of part of the model that I'm going to share with you is called the 3 systems of affect regulation, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. So as a species, we need the ability to have a bit of an alarm system to threats. And when there is a threat, we need to respond in a way to protect ourselves. So this threat system activates emotions of anger, anxiety, disgust, and the evolutionary function, the point of those emotions are to keep us and our loved ones safe. But it's not enough just to be safe from danger. We also need to go out and get resources. So this is where the drive system comes in. So emotions of kind of excitement or vitality occur when we reach the goals that we want to get. You know, we get the resources we need. So it's very much about achievement, motivation, reward seeking, pleasure, and it's associated with dopamine as well. So if our drive system is underactive, that's when we might be feeling low in motivation or maybe feeling a bit depressed. the third system, which is often quite neglected in our society, is feeling, we're not escaping any danger, we're not pursuing any goals. It's about slowing down and feeling safe and content, having a social connection. So feeling connected, content, it's often associated with oxytocin, and having that ability to rest and digest. So often what we find in people who, well, many of us in our culture, is that we're often staying in the threat and the drive, because if we don't reach the goals that we need, we can go back into threat. That can feel like a real sort of danger to us, and it might be, in a work context, if we don't meet our targets, we might not get a bonus, for example. So we can often be going around in threat and drive, and the soothing system is very much offline. So it's really helpful actually sometimes to just think about, and maybe I'll invite you to do a quick mindful check-in, and this is, I've just given you a really brief description, and you can go into a lot more detail, but just thinking about your three systems, how much might there be balanced? How many triggers, external triggers to the threat system might there be? How much do you kind of really seek to put some rest time in, or some time to connect with others? And obviously COVID has made this incredibly challenging, and people have had to find different ways of trying to get these systems online. But by doing a mindful check-in, what we're increasing is people's self-awareness, because if you go through your work day or your work week and you realize that actually there's never any soothing system online, there's really very little rest and very little kind of maybe being in nature, which we'll come on to with our product later, or little contact in a social way, then we're unbalanced. And when we're unbalanced, that's not good for us as human beings. The aim is to balance these three systems. Okay, so let's think a little bit about our clients. And it might not surprise you, for those of you who do work with high flyers, that there's often high levels of threat and drive. So for our two clients, the threat system was very big, and a lot of that was linked to the work context, so the challenges and just the sheer volume of work. But actually it was also very related to self-criticism. So what both of these guys were doing was really being hard on themselves, really having a high standard, but being quite hard on themselves. And there was different reasons for them individually. And one of the areas that we work into that we haven't covered in great detail today is understanding the self-critic, understanding the origins of the self-critic, what the self-critic might be trying to help us with, but how it might be being unhelpful in the way that, when I showed the brain after we did the lemon exercise, when we're criticizing ourselves, we're stimulating the threat system. And when we're under threat, actually that reduces our ability to function well, because, it shuts down some of our new brain abilities. The other thing for our clients were these past traumas, including some kind of intrusive post-traumatic stress symptoms. So this is where this is why these clients were the ones that Hilary and I shared, and I was able to go into some depth in that respect. So the way that the clients were trying to handle the threat was by going to drive, because that's what they'd always done, bit of striving, bit of perfectionism, maybe even a little bit OCD for both of them actually. But what was happening was, that sometimes it was just going back into threat, because often your self-critic is never happy. And if you're a perfectionist, you can never actually be perfect, because human beings means that we're a bit flawed, and perfectionism is this unattainable thing. So what was happening for them is they were going back and forth between threat and drive, and there was very little resting. So in sharing this model, it was helping them gain an insight into what was the balance of their three systems, and then thinking together about what might help them rebalance it. So obviously, one of the aims is to build up this soothing system, this rest and digest. And there's lots of practical ways, which I'm sure many of you do already in your coaching, to think about how to practically sort of manage workload. But there was also, and using sort of mindfulness and breathing. And this is where our product sort of comes in as well. It's a way of activating this soothing system through nature and mindful audios. But by increasing this system, what we're doing is we start to reduce the threat system. And one of the reasons this is because the soothing system is an evolutionary adapted system, I suppose, a network within our minds and our bodies that helps reduce threat. So it's based in the caregiving system, the mammalian caregiving system. So when a baby, for example, is crying and distressed, if mother responds with a soft voice tone, if she's calm, if she soothes them, strokes them, that naturally brings the threat down for the baby. So we're kind of hacking into these systems in a helpful way. We get the soothing system online and we can reduce threat. And if we reduce threat, we don't have to work quite so hard either, because we're not feeling quite as physiologically aroused. So the soothing system is about stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system and bringing balance. So, you know, for the two people I was working with, it was partly about reducing and building up this different voice, you know, taking in, actually, it's not my fault that I had a father who was like this, who was also very critical. It's not my fault that my brain does this at night. You know, I have these loops, but what can I do that's helpful? And how can I start to cultivate in my mind a compassionate self-corrector, you know, a voice that still wants the best for me? It's not about slacking off and not trying hard. It's about doing it in a way that has your best interests at heart. It's not putting you down. It's not being overly critical. So one of the ways that we do this is through cultivating a compassionate self. So remember back to the brain slide where we'd done the lemon, having a self-compassionate voice helps us get this system online, helps us calm down. And like our title says, when we're calm, we are capable. So we're bringing this compassionate focus. So I'm going to give you a little taster, and we would spend longer doing this, but it, you know, sometimes it's surprising what you can do in a short time. So I'm just going to give you a little taster of the compassionate self. So again, think about your body posture, because actually cultivating and creating a body posture can really help us get into a compassionate mind. Having a stance where we're kind of confident, authoritative, imagining being really wise. So just having an upright, open posture, and close your eyes if you wish to, and just take a few deep breaths, just grounding the body, feeling the feet connected to the floor. And it can be helpful to remember a time that you were with another person, maybe in your work context, maybe home context, but you were with someone who was struggling, and you really had this deep intention to be helpful, not harmful. You know, a compassionate intention. You notice that they're struggling and you want to take action. You want to be able to help in some way, alleviate some of the struggling that they're having. And just remember how you were empathic, and how you might have had their best interests at heart. So we use that memory as a starting point, and we can think about it as you at your best, you know, you when you were having a really good day, you're really feeling helpful and connected. I'm just going to invite you to think about the qualities of wisdom, strength, and courage. And when you breathe out, just imagine those qualities expanding in your body. So you can imagine breathing in calm. And then as you breathe out, just imagine you are getting wiser and stronger, more courageous. Really connecting with a warmth and kindness. You know, wanting to be helpful in this world. And whilst, you know, we started with a flow out, you know, so compassion coming from you to others, I'm just going to invite you to turn that in towards yourself, you know, having that compassionate self, your compassionate mind, and thinking how you might turn it back on towards yourself. Okay, and you can relax your attention. So that was a really brief experience of the idea of a compassionate self, and we can go into it in a lot more detail, you know, really creating what is uniquely helpful for that person, and you can develop a compassionate other, like a wise imagined guide, and just start to change that self-talk essentially. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of CFT, and compassion focused coaching is something Hilary and I are developing, and we are doing a 2-day workshop in June where you can really get to grips with the model a bit more and learn it from the inside out. But just to kind of hand over back to Hilary, we're going to first hear from one of our clients, and then Hilary's going to complete that part. Okay.
Yeah, for the combination of yourself and Hilary, I think there are three main benefits and impacts it's had on me. So I think first and foremost, and most importantly for me, I really now understand myself better. So managing the self-critic doesn't remove the self-critic, but managing myself better, really understanding, getting to know myself. It sounds a very strange thing to say, but that building block has been really quite powerful, and the work with Ashleigh has really set that and helped me manage and deal with things. Secondly, taking that further is really the ability to then give me the confidence to share that with the most important person in my life, my partner and my wife. And incredibly, that hadn't happened. And so knowing yourself gives you the ability to be able to share that, and always then that helps the self-management as well, and with close friends, and also some work colleagues, to be able to offload and talk about things has been quite powerful for me. But I couldn't have done that without those basic building blocks. And thirdly, all of that is just really significant. It's really powerful to be able to then take that. It gives me self-confidence with my personal brand, and to be able to just quite calmly talk about who I am and what I do. And it just gives me that power, which I don't think I had before. And it's in its simplicity and it's in its basic essence that's really significant.
It sounds like it's helped you sort of find your best self and connect with that in a really authentic, genuine way. Yes,
and I'll be honest, at times the best self is a little bit further away, but I'm human, and so but it's recognizing the signs and recognizing what you've helped me with, what if you both helped me with, is recognizing the signs and managing that, so that you end up, the best self is always put forward in the best way you can. But every day is different and every challenge is different, and it's been no ordinary 18 months, is it? So for all of us across the world. So what a great example of being able to deal with that in a better way too. So
thanks ever so much. That's great. Thank you, Ashleigh. So the really interesting part of the work that I then took for the following 4 weeks prior to our tripartite meeting at the end was that client A, the lovely Rob that you've just seen, his world completely changed. His line manager was moved out. He was put into the middle of a reorg. He had to start applying for jobs. I was fearful of redundancy. So when he talks about being able to use the models and dialing down the self-critic, he's talking about the world not changing and becoming kinder. You know, the world he was living in and managing actually became more threatening. And interestingly, the other client also, they'd gone from having enjoying investment to being acquired by a much bigger company. So pressure on him too and our ongoing work. So this isn't about finding a different place to be. This is about being with the discomfort of everything that's going around, but having these amazing models around the compassionate self and the compassionate mind that bridges the work Ashleigh did into the work I did. So when I was talking to Rob here about his personal brand that he talked about, and he was looking at other jobs, one of his quotes is, in terms of my self-critic and what I used to listen to, and one thing his self-critic would regularly say would be, you should be a director by now. And he found that he could be just less attentive to that voice. And when he talked about the fact that he actually now shared feelings and self-knowing with others, that he realised that those conversations actually activated that green soothing system, so that it allowed him to benefit from hearing himself speak. And equally, in terms of that perfectionist self, he quite simply said, now I realise, when we were talking about jobs and which jobs he should be going for, now he realises that that perfectionist self may just have to wait. So the shift is sort of tangible in a world that actually became more threatening than not, which was the fascinating thing for me. And the fact that Ashleigh could just give me those models, I could continue to work with those models in the workplace environment and challenges, was how we made the progress. Now, because we like a busy life, we just thought, what else can we do to fill our day? And this is where we come to talk to you a bit about the product. Now, Ash has talked about the benefit of a mindful approach, becoming more mindful of ourselves, our patterns, those that benefit us, those that don't. I personally found in a corporate environment, when people were high on threat and drive in their systems, the idea literally of becoming mindful could almost trigger the threat system more than the soothe. And anxiety often, and a slight discomfort about that with someone else's tribe, not mine. I'm this, they're that. There may be weakness associated with this, and similarly to the word compassion. So I guess I started the ball rolling by thinking, how can I, between coaching sessions with folk like the clients we talked to you about, how can I help them? Almost prescribe them something that will help them with some structure in how they get to know themselves and understand their mind better. There's plenty of audio only stuff out there on the market, but often that wasn't enough when I tried to introduce it as a tool between coaching face to face. I was very aware, just from my own personal background, because this was before COVID, that nature has always been my go-to place, and it felt like, oh, wouldn't it be great if you could be in nature, but while you're sitting at your desk, and listen to an audio if you want to. And because I'd done some work with VR headsets and was so impressed by the immersive experience of being in a headset, I thought, yeah, and a bit of kit would probably go down with this community really well. So we decided to just have a go at creating something. So we're going to just give you a little whistle-stop tour of what this product now looks like, that we now wrap up with all the coaching we offer. We offer 3 families of audios. And this is a kind of, if we think about couch to 5K, right? So if I'd never run before, I'm highly unlikely to want to get off the couch. This is similar to people who've tried and maybe not been successful, or just steered clear of mindfulness. So I felt we needed a kind of stepping stone process to introduce them. So Ashleigh and I, between us, have created short 6-minute audios in these 3 families. And I guess I would say, for my clients, I'd probably say go to Coach the Leader first, because you'll hear my voice to start off. And these are likely to be from self-awareness down to ambiguity. That's the family that we talk quite a lot about when we're talking about emotional intelligence and the context of the workplace. The other 2, the Train the Mind, you can see at the far left, very specific titles, which I think, in my view, would kind of be the next level towards a more mindful practice. Again, only 6 minutes. And then finally, the Calm Your Mind is really thinking about how your body's behaving and getting to notice where you are, and observing the mind is one of my favourite ones in there. But this would allow me to quite specifically prescribe an audio to the client and say, I would suggest between this coaching session and the next one, you make an effort to go into these audios, explore the others by all means, but just start a bit of practice, even if it's just once a day, 3 days a week. That's the beginning. This is quite small, but then when you go into the website, which every client can do, they can then, if they want to, they can just listen to an audio, or they can just watch a film of nature. But they get a lovely family group of whether they want to go to a beach or a garden or a landscape, etc. And then here I've clicked on water in that family, and then underneath you can see it offers you a wide variety of scenes of nature with water. And there on the bottom right is a lovely wood in the beautiful summer from last year with a running stream. And each one of those films of nature is 6 minutes long as well, so can accompany the audio and just give you a little small structure, because it's 2 senses rather than 1. You can be immersed if you've got a VR headset. All our clients get one with the package, but equally you can watch it on any device, from your phone to laptop to iPad.
And it's still that 360 experience, isn't it, Hill? So you do.
Yes, you're right, Ash, yes.
Around, so even if you haven't got a headset on, you can still really feel like you're there.
Yeah, just hearing the birds and the sound of the water can very quickly impact on our brain. As Ashleigh says, you don't have to be actually doing these things to feel the benefit of them. And of course, we wanted something else to do. So we thought, well, while we're doing all this, let's go out and work with Aston University, who were absolutely incredible in their support for us. Aston's based in Birmingham in the UK. They have a business school as well. So they were very interested to take our Mind Trainer offering. They found 53 participants who were in full-time work and owned a VR headset, because with COVID, we couldn't be handing those around. They carried out a daily diary study over 15 working days. Each one of the participants were presented with one of 4 interventions every day. And these interventions on a daily basis are followed by 3 measures per day at 2, 4 and 6 hours. Was that right, Ashleigh? If I got those timings right? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and the interventions included a control group. So we were looking at separating out whether watching the video or not helped. So it was important to have a control.
So we let Aston do what Aston are good at, and the incredible findings that we were really quite shocked at. And Ash has said before when we chatted, you know, she could hardly believe that 6 minutes could have such an impact over a longer period as well. So these, first of all, that yes, using this for 6 minutes does have a significant effect on psychological energy and can drive task performance. So boost in energy and psychological mood. And the next one was, and that was immediate, and up to 2 hours after the intervention, you would have the benefit of a boost in energy and mood. Watching a video as well had a positive effect on task performance for up to 4 hours after that intervention, which was really fascinating. But what we were very interested in was the VR headset specifically had benefits for 4 to 6 hours when they had the combined nature and audio experience. And that was specifically on innovation and creativity and problem solving.
Oh, sorry.
And that was, the 4 to 6 hours. So these research findings, they're very fresh off the blocks. It spurred us on to use Mind Trainer combined with the models of the compassionate mind training to really help clients not only do the doing when with them, but also be able to access something in between times that, while prescribed, can really help build that practice of noticing in order that they can find more choices in how they behave and indeed increase their own well-being. So that brings the workshop to a close.
Yeah, and I guess it's worth saying, you know, we would encourage everyone to go and have a look at your Virtual Mind Trainer website, which is on the title page, because we would have liked to have given you an actual experience, but I think the bandwidth over Zoom just makes it really tricky. But you can get a free month, can't you?
Yes.
And even just a little clip for a minute or so to try it there and then. But yeah, I think all the research around watching nature virtually really is impactful. And I, as a psychologist, like Hilary said, wasn't just surprised about the 6 minutes, but the effect of watching nature really impressed me, that it could have that effect.
Yeah.
You kind of think, well, it's still on a screen and I'd much rather be out there, but just having that little snippet is yeah.
And we're really enjoying bringing together some coaches who are interested in having a go and building up a bit of a peer community about their experiences of using this intervention with clients alongside the compassion focused coaching models. So it's very exciting, it's very new, and if anyone's interested, they're very welcome just to email either of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for your time.